The council chamber was loud as always. Hundreds of alien voices filled the massive hall, speaking in languages that sounded like clicks, whistles, and roars. Above them all, the translation system worked hard to turn everything into words everyone could understand. Ambassador Ho stood at the human platform. His hands gripped the edges of the podium. He was an older man now with gray hair and tired eyes. Behind him stood Wu, his young assistant. She held a that contained all their research, all their proof, all their hope. This was the third time they had asked. 3 years in a row, standing in this same spot, making the same request. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Ho said in his calm voice. Humanity requests equal voting rights in council decisions. We have been part of this council for 50 years. In that time, we have contributed much to our galactic community. He pulled up images on the display behind him. Wu had spent months preparing them. Human doctors created the vaccine that stopped the Red Death Plague. That plague killed millions before we found the cure. Human farmers solved the famine. Our crops now feed 8 billion people across those worlds. Human engineers have repaired 17 failing colony stations. Human peacekeepers have died protecting council worlds from pirates and raiders. The chamber was not quiet but not loud either. Some aliens listened. Most did not care. We have earned our place here, Ho continued. We ask only for the same rights as other member species. 1 vote, equal standing, that is all. A massive insect-like creature rose from the front row. This was the Council Prime. He was the leader of the species. They looked like giant mantises with sharp mandibles and multiple eyes. When spoke, his mandibles clicked together and the translator turned his words into cold, formal speech. Ambassador Ho said, "The civilization is 14,000 years old. We have seen stars born and die. We have built empires across hundreds of worlds. The thought weavers behind me have existed since before your sun was formed. They have wisdom that spans ages." He gestured around the chamber with one of his sharp limbs. Humanity has been in space for less than 200 years. You have been on this council for 50 years. That is nothing. You are bobbies. You are children playing games while adults discuss important matters. Behind Ho, Wu felt her jaw tighten. Her fingers pressed hard against her. She wanted to shout at them. She wanted to show them all the data again. Human innovations had saved billions of lives. Human ideas had solved problems these ancient species could not fix, but her words would not matter. Other council members began to speak. A huge and covered in thick armor plates laughed loudly. "The humans want to vote. Perhaps we should let the mice vote too." Other joined his laughter. A thought weaver, a being made of floating crystals that glowed with different colors, pulsed with orange and red light. The translator said these colors meant contempt and dismissal. More voices joined in, some mocked, some dismissed. A few stayed quiet, but they were the minority. Ho stood still and waited. He had expected this. He had seen this reaction twice before, but Wu thought she saw something different in his eyes today. A decision had been made. "We will now vote on the human proposal," announced. "All in favor of granting humanity equal voting rights." Lights appeared on the voting board. Each species had a light. Green meant yes, red meant no. The board filled with red, a sea of red lights with only a few small green dots scattered throughout. Wu counted them, 12 green lights. The same 12 species that always voted with humanity. Small species, weak species, species that needed human help. 3 yellow lights showed abstention. These species did not care enough to pick a side. "The vote is complete," announced. 847 against, 12 in favor, 3 abstentions. The proposal is rejected. The chamber filled with noise again. The aliens moved on to other topics. For them, this was done. Finished. Time to discuss more important things. Ho began putting his materials away. He gathered the display controls, the formal documents that Wu had prepared. He moved slowly, carefully, with the precise movements of a man who had made a choice. He bowed to the council. It was a human gesture, a sign of respect. The council had come to expect it from him. The human delegation acknowledges the council's decision, Ho said. His voice was quiet, but somehow it carried through the noise. We will be departing now. Yes, yes, until next cycle, Ambassador said. He was already turning away, already moving to the next item on his agenda. The human problem was solved, rejected, again. No, Ho said. The single word stopped. The council prime turned back to look at the human. No, repeated. No, Ho said again. Not until next cycle. We are departing permanently. Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council effective immediately. We are done. For exactly 3 seconds, the chamber was completely silent. Every alien stopped talking. Every translation system paused. Every eye, lens, and sensory organ focused on the human at the podium. Then the laughter started. It began with their booming voices shaking the floor. Then the joined in, their mandibles clicking in patterns that meant amusement. Even the thought weavers pulsed with colors of humor. You cannot leave, said, still clicking with laughter. Where will you go? What will you do? Humanity needs the council. You need our technology, our knowledge, our protection. Ho finished packing his materials. He picked up his case and walked toward the exit. Wu followed him, her face showing no emotion. At the doorway, Ho stopped and looked back one last time. You will learn, he said simply. You will all learn what we brought to this council, and you will learn it the hard way. Then he walked out. Wu followed. The door closed behind them. In the council chamber, the laughter continued, but a few species did not laugh. Representative of the sat in his seat, his face showing worry. The had voted yes. They knew what humanity had been doing for them. Human doctors had been working on a cure for the fertility crisis. Without humans, they might go extinct. Tried to send a message to Hose. The message bounced back immediately. Contact blocked. Do not contact humanity again. Across the station, similar messages were being sent by human personnel. Dr. Haywan, who had been researching the plague, sent notice that she was leaving. Engineer Yang, who had been building the Thought Weaver colony ship, recalled his entire team. Captain Sangwoo, commander of the Human Expeditionary Guard, began withdrawing his fleets from their positions across 17 systems. Within hours, every human in council space began packing. They left their research. They closed their clinics. They abandoned their projects. They shut down their entertainment broadcasts. They stopped answering messages. The humans were leaving, and they were doing it in complete silence. In the council chamber, finally stopped laughing. He looked at the empty human platform and felt something he had not felt in centuries, a small doubt. They will be back, he said to the council. They need us more than we need them. They will realize their mistake and return. You will see. But as the session continued, that small doubt grew larger, because somewhere deep inside knew something was wrong. The humans had not left in anger. They had not shouted or threatened. They had simply left. And that silence was somehow worse than any threat could have been. 10 days after Ambassador Ho walked out of the council chamber, the last human left council space. They called it the Great Silence, though nobody used that name until much later. At first, the aliens just called it the Human Tantrum or the Great Sulk. They thought humans were being emotional and childish. They thought humans would come back once they calmed down. They were wrong. Dr. Haywan was one of the first to leave. She had been working on II for 8 years, studying the plague in a research facility near the capital city. The plague was a terrible disease that made scales grow inside us body until they could not move or breathe. Millions had died from it over the centuries. Haywan had been close to a cure, very close. Her last tests had shown promising results, but when she received the withdrawal order from Earth, she packed everything. All her research notes, all her samples, all her data. She loaded it onto a ship and left. The scientists at the facility tried to stop her. "You cannot take that research," they said. "It belongs to the council. We funded this facility." Hayone looked at them with tired eyes. "You funded the building. We brought the knowledge, and that knowledge is leaving with me." She left them standing in an empty lab, with equipment they did not know how to use and research they could not understand. Engineer Yang did the same thing with the Thought Weaver colony ship. The ship was supposed to carry 1,000,000 Thought Weavers across the galaxy to start a new colony in another galactic arm. It was 70% finished. The hull was complete. The life support was installed, but the quantum phase drives that would let it cross such a huge distance were not done. Only humans knew how to make those drives work. Human engineers had taken the Thought Weaver designs and changed them, improved them, made them actually function. The original designs were beautiful, but they did not work. Human engineers had made them practical. When Yang and his team left, they took all their modifications with them. They deleted all the plans from the ship's computers. They removed the half-finished drive components they had installed. The Thought Weavers pulsed with angry red colors. "This is sabotage," they accused. "No," Yang said calmly. "Sabotage would be breaking what is here. We are simply taking back what is ours. Good luck finishing the ship." He knew they could not finish it. The Thought Weavers thought in straight lines, in perfect mathematical formulas. Human engineering was different. It was messy, creative, full of workarounds and clever tricks. The Thought Weavers could not think that way. Captain Sangwoo his fleets from their posts across the outer rim. His ships had been protecting trade routes, fighting off pirates, and keeping peace in disputed territories. His fleet was not the largest in the galaxy, but it had a reputation. Pirates knew that human peacekeepers did not follow predictable patterns. They could not be outmaneuvered by standard tactics. They were dangerous because they were unpredictable. When Sangwoo's ships left, they did it all at once. One day they were there, patrolling and protecting. The next day they were gone. No explanation, no warning, just empty space where human ships used to be. The pirates noticed immediately. Professor closed down her section of the Grand Archive, the massive library that held knowledge from all council species. She had been uploading human information for decades. History, science, art, philosophy. But she had been careful. The most important human knowledge, the deepest insights, had never been uploaded. She had kept it separate in human databases, protected behind human encryption. Now she took all of it and left. The Grand Archive still had basic human information, but the advanced stuff was gone. The creative problem-solving methods, the lateral thinking techniques, the psychological studies that showed how humans approached impossible problems. All gone. Agricultural specialist Ho shut down the hybrid crop programs on 8 colony worlds. These crops had been feeding billions. They were special crops that Ho had designed himself, mixing Earth plants with alien biology to create food that could grow in alien soil and feed alien mouths. The locals thought they could keep growing the crops. After all, you just plant seeds and water them, right? But Ho's crops were not simple. They needed careful balance, special nutrients at specific times, precise temperature control, constant monitoring and adjustment. Without Ho and his team to manage them, the crops would fail, and they would fail fast. The entertainment networks went dark. Human musicians stopped broadcasting. Human storytellers stopped sharing their tales. Human artists stopped displaying their work. This seemed like the least important withdrawal, but it hit harder than anyone expected. For 50 years, human culture had been spreading through council space. Their music was strange and emotional. Their stories showed perspectives that no alien had considered. Their art expressed feelings in ways that resonated across species barriers. Suddenly, it was all gone. The aliens who had been enjoying human entertainment found themselves feeling empty, like something important had been taken away. The council noticed all of this, but they did not understand. Issued an official statement. The human departure is regrettable but ultimately meaningless. The council has existed for millions of years. We will adapt to their absence easily. Most council members agreed. The thought weavers pulsed with satisfied colors, glad to be rid of the chaotic humans. The held parties celebrating their departure. But some voices showed concern. Representative of the sent desperate messages to Earth. The needed human help. Their species was dying. After the devastation wars, 70% of had become sterile. They could not have children. Human geneticists had been working on a solution, using creative gene therapy that combined methods no doctor had thought of. Without humans, they would go extinct. It would take a few generations, but it would happen. Messages to Earth all received the same response. An automated message in perfect language. Humanity thanks the Galactic Council for the opportunity to participate. We now return to our own affairs. Please do not contact us again. He tried personal messages to the human geneticists he had worked with. All blocked. He tried sending gifts, apologies, desperate pleas. Nothing got through. The borders of human space closed. Every jump gate leading to Earth's colonies went dark. You could not travel into human territory anymore. Trade ships that tried were politely but firmly turned away by automated defense systems. The message was always the same. Human space is closed. Leave now. Diplomatic channels shut down. Trade agreements were canceled. Every connection between humanity and the Council was severed. The humans had turned away completely. Station Commander Wu Jin was the last human administrator on the Crossroads, a massive trading station where 5 major trade routes met. For 20 years, Wu Jin had managed this station. He knew every system, every quirk, every little adjustment that kept everything running smoothly. When he left, he offered to train his replacement. An administrator named Kirsha took over. Kirsha was confident. "How hard can station management be?" he asked. "We have run stations for thousands of years." Wu Jin just smiled sadly and handed over the access codes. "Good luck," he said, then he left. Within 3 days, the Crossroads began having problems. Ships arrived but could not dock because the scheduling system was malfunctioning. Cargo piled up in the wrong warehouses. The environmental system started failing, putting methane breathers in oxygen-rich areas and vice versa. Kirsha tried to fix it. He followed all the protocols. He did everything by the book. But the station got worse, not better, because Wu Jin had not run the station by the book. He had run it by intuition, by experience, by knowing when to break the rules to make things work. Kirsha did not have that intuition. No did. All across Council space, similar problems appeared. Humans had been filling roles that seemed simple but were not. They had been solving problems in ways that looked easy but required a special kind of thinking. They had been holding things together with creativity and flexibility. And now they were gone. In the Council chambers called a special session 3 months after the withdrawal. "We are experiencing some difficulties," he admitted. "But these are temporary. We simply need time to adjust to managing things ourselves." Most council members agreed. They were ancient species. They had wisdom. They would adapt. But in the back channels, in private conversations, some aliens were starting to worry. They were starting to whisper questions they did not want to ask out loud. What if the humans had been more important than they thought? What if humanity had not needed the Council? What if the Council had needed humanity? And the most frightening question of all, what happens now? 3 months after humanity left, the first real problems started to show. Station Commander Kirsha stood in the control center of the Crossroads and watched his world fall apart. The screens around him flashed with red warning lights. Ships were waiting to dock. Some had been waiting for 5 days. Cargo sat in warehouses, rotting or freezing because it was in the wrong storage areas. 3 different species had filed formal complaints because the life support in their quarters was wrong. "I do not understand," Kirzha said to his assistant. "I am following every protocol, every procedure, everything should work." His assistant, another named I, clicked her mandibles nervously. "Perhaps the protocols are wrong." "Impossible," Kirzha said. "These protocols have been used for centuries. They are proven. They are correct." But they were not working. The station that had run perfectly under Wu Jin's management was now barely functional. Ships that used to dock within hours now waited for days. The environmental systems that had worked flawlessly were now constantly failing. Kirzha did not understand that Wu Jin had never followed the protocols exactly. The human had bent the rules constantly. When a ship needed to dock urgently, Wu Jin would shuffle the schedule, moving less urgent ships around. When the environmental system had a conflict, Wu Jin would adjust things manually, creating custom solutions for each problem. The protocols were guidelines. Wu Jin had treated them as suggestions, not laws, and that flexibility had made everything work. Kirzha could not think that way. No could. They followed rules. That was how their species had survived for 14,000 years. Rules, protocols, and procedures kept things stable and safe. But rules alone could not run the crossroads. On II, the plague came back with terrible force. The scientists had tried to continue Dr. Haywon's research. They had her equipment. They had her lab. They even had some of her older notes that she had left behind. But they could not understand her work. Haywon's research was not just data and procedures. It was filled with intuitive leaps, creative guesses, and experimental approaches that made no logical sense until you saw them work. She would try things that should not work, just to see what happened. She would combine treatments in ways that violated standard medical practice. And somehow, her crazy methods had been working. The scientists tried to follow her notes exactly. They failed. The treatments did not work. The plague spread. Within 2 months, 17 million died. The council declared II a quarantine zone. Nobody could leave the planet. Nobody could enter. Himself had family on that planet. His younger brother sent him messages every day describing the situation. "People are dying in the streets," his brother wrote. "The hospitals are full. We are burning bodies by the thousands. Where is the cure? Where are the humans?" Had no answer. The Thoughtweaver colony ship sat in orbit around their home world, a monument to failure. The hull was beautiful, perfect, exactly as designed. But without the quantum phase drives, it could not go anywhere. It was just an expensive, useless sculpture. The Thoughtweavers tried to finish the drives themselves. They brought in their best engineers and their most brilliant scientists. They studied the partial work that Yang's team had left behind. They ran simulations and calculations. Everything failed. The problem was that Thoughtweaver engineering was perfect and precise. Their designs were mathematically flawless, but human engineering was messy. Humans would put a component in a place that made no mathematical sense, but somehow it worked. They would connect systems in ways that violated theory, but the result functioned better than the theoretical design. Human engineering was jazz music. It was improvisation. It was chaos that somehow became harmony. Thoughtweaver engineering was classical symphony. Every note planned, every movement precise. You could not finish a jazz piece by following classical rules. The Thoughtweavers had invested their entire economy in this colony ship project. Centuries of resources had gone into it. They had sold bonds based on the promise of new colony worlds in other galactic arms. Their entire civilization was counting on this ship to succeed. Now it never would. The Thoughtweaver economy began to collapse as investors realized the ship would never be finished. In the Outer Rim, pirates came back in force. Captain Sangwoo's fleets had been keeping 17 systems safe. The pirates had tested human forces many times over the years and they had learned to avoid them. Human peacekeepers were unpredictable. They used tactics that made no sense. They would retreat when they should attack, attack when they should retreat, and somehow always win. Pirates liked predictable enemies. You could plan around predictable behavior, but humans were never predictable. Now the humans were gone, and the Council sent their own forces to fill the gap. The Council fleets were much larger than the human fleets had been. They had better weapons and better ships. On paper, they should have been much more effective. But they were predictable. Within a month, the pirates had figured out the Council fleet patterns. They knew when patrols would arrive, where they would go, and how they would respond to attacks. The pirates started hitting convoys just after patrols left an area. They would attack, steal what they wanted, and disappear before the patrol came back. The Council forces followed doctrine perfectly, and doctrine made them easy to avoid. Trade in the Outer Rim dropped by 60%. Ships refused to travel without heavy escorts. Entire colonies stopped receiving supplies. Or went to war. These two species had hated each other for centuries. They shared a border and both claimed the same 3-star systems. For 20 years, human peacekeepers had been managing this dispute. They had mediated talks, prevented small incidents from escalating, and kept an uneasy peace. The humans were good at this because they understood both sides. They could see why they felt the systems were theirs. They could see why had legitimate claims. And they could find creative compromises that satisfied both species, at least enough to prevent war. When the humans left, the old hatreds came back immediately. A mining ship entered one of the disputed systems, or a patrol ship ordered them to leave. They refused. Or fired a warning shot, the shot back. Within a week, both species had mobilized their fleets. The Council tried to mediate, but their diplomats had no idea how to handle it. They followed standard diplomatic procedures, holding formal meetings and proposing compromises from a protocol handbook. It did not work. Did not want formal meetings. They wanted someone who understood their anger, their fear, their pride. They wanted someone who could speak to them as equals, not as a superior reading from a handbook. They wanted humans, but the humans were gone. The war began. 3-star systems burned. 40 billion people were displaced as planets were bombarded. On Council Prime Station, life was getting harder every day. Station Commander Bora had been the head of crisis management for 15 years. When she left, she took her crisis management protocols with her. But more importantly, she took her experience and intuition. Her replacement, a named tried to use the protocols Bora had written. They were good protocols, detailed and thorough, but they required judgment. They required someone to read between the lines and understand when to follow the protocol and when to improvise. Or followed the protocols exactly. When a crisis hit a colony world, he did exactly what the handbook said. He sent exactly the resources the protocol required. He followed every step precisely. 3 colonies died because the protocol did not account for their specific situations. The handbook said to send certain supplies, but those colonies needed different supplies. The handbook said to evacuate in a certain order, but that order did not work for those species. Bora would have seen these problems immediately and adjusted. She would have broken the protocol to save lives. Or followed the protocol and watched colonies die. The entertainment networks remained dark, and this was causing problems nobody had expected. Depression rates across Council space increased by 40%. Social unrest was growing. Productivity was dropping. Psychologists tried to understand why. What they found surprised them. Human entertainment had not just been fun. It had been therapy. Human stories showed characters overcoming impossible odds. Human music expressed emotions that other species felt but could not articulate. Human art gave hope when logic said there was no reason for hope. Without human culture, the aliens felt hopeless. Their own entertainment felt hollow now missing something they could not name. The council held an emergency session. Every representative who could attend was there. The chamber was full, but the mood was dark. Stood at the center, his mandibles clicking slowly. "We must discuss our current situation," he said. "We are experiencing difficulties we did not anticipate." "Difficulties?" Representative of the stood up. "My people are going extinct. The human geneticists who were working on our fertility crisis are gone. Without them, they will be dead within 3 generations. This is not a difficulty. This is an extinction event." Other representatives began to speak. The colonies were reporting food shortages. The crossroads was barely functional. The plague had killed millions. The thought weaver economy was collapsing. War was spreading in the outer rim. "We need to contact humanity," said. "We need to ask them to return." Clicked his mandibles in agreement. "I will send a formal message immediately." That night personally wrote a message to Ambassador Ho. He marked it with every priority flag the council had. He poured his heart into it, explaining the situation, begging for help. The response came 3 days later. Not an automated response this time, but a personal message. Read it aloud to the council. The Galactic Council had 14,000 years to learn wisdom. Humanity had 50 years to teach you. You chose not to listen. We will not return. Good luck with your adult affairs. The message was signed by Ambassador Ho. The council chamber fell completely silent. Every representative understood what that message meant. The humans were not coming back, ever. 6 months after humanity left, the Galactic Council faced a crisis like nothing in their recorded history. The colonies were starving. Ho's hybrid crops had been feeding 8 billion people across 12 worlds in the system. After he left, the local farmers thought they could handle the crops themselves. They had watched the human agricultural teams work for years. It looked simple enough. But it was not simple. The crops started failing within weeks, first slowly, then faster and faster. The farmers tried everything they knew. They used more water, then less water, more nutrients, different nutrients. Nothing worked. The problem was that Ho's crops were not natural. They were engineered carefully to balance dozens of factors. Temperature had to be exact. Soil pH had to change at specific times during the growth cycle. The crops needed certain nutrients at dawn and different nutrients at dusk. They were like complex machines that happened to be plants. Without constant adjustment and monitoring by people who understood them, they died. The farmers called for help. Agricultural experts from other council species arrived to study the problem. They ran tests. They analyzed the soil. They examined the dead plants. They could see what was wrong, but they could not fix it. Because fixing it required thinking like Ho. You had to be willing to try strange solutions. You had to experiment. You had to guess and test and fail and try again. You had to be comfortable with chaos and uncertainty. The council experts were not comfortable with chaos. They wanted proven solutions and tested methods. They wanted to know something would work before they tried it. By the time they finished studying the problem, millions were starving. The council sent emergency food supplies from other worlds. But there was a problem. The logistics system that distributed food across council space had been designed by humans. More specifically, it had been managed by humans who understood how to move resources efficiently through a chaotic galaxy. Ships arrived at the wrong planets. Food sat in warehouses while people starved 3 systems away. Distribution centers could not coordinate with each other. The whole system was falling apart. Ships carrying grain to IV arrived at VII instead. By the time they realized the mistake and rerouted, the grain had spoiled in the heat. Food meant for one colony world was sent to another that could not even digest it. Methane breathers received oxygen breather food. Carnivores received plants. 32 million people died on the worlds, not because there was not enough food in council space. There was plenty. They died because nobody could figure out how to deliver it. On II, the death toll from plague had reached 50 million. The entire planet was a quarantine zone now. Received messages from his brother less often. When they came, they were shorter, more desperate. The last message simply said, "We are dying, all of us. Tell the humans we are sorry." Then the messages stopped. His brother was dead. The government announced they would pay any price for human medical help. They broadcast messages toward human space offering money, technology, territory, anything. The messages were ignored. The Thought Weaver economy was not just collapsing anymore. It was dead. The colony ship project had been abandoned. The massive ship sat in orbit, empty and useless. Investors had lost everything. Millions of Thought Weavers who had bought bonds based on the colony project were now bankrupt. Crime rates among Thought Weavers increased for the first time in their recorded history. Thought Weavers prided themselves on being logical and law-abiding. But when logic said you had no future, when your life savings were gone and your government had no solutions, some Thought Weavers stopped following logic. The Thought Weaver civilization, ancient and stable for millions of years, was tearing itself apart. In the Outer Rim, the war between the and or had spread. Other species were getting involved, taking sides based on old alliances and grudges. What had started as a dispute over 3 systems had become a regional war involving 9 species and 40 systems. The Council sent peacekeeping forces, but they were useless. They were too slow to respond to attacks, too predictable in their tactics, too rigid in their thinking. Human peacekeepers had kept the peace not through force, but through reputation. Pirates and warlords had feared human forces because humans were crazy enough to win fights they should lose. They would take risks that made no tactical sense and somehow turn losing battles into victories. The Council forces fought by the book, and everyone had read the book. More systems burned, more billions died or became refugees. The Crossroads Station was dying. Half the businesses had closed. Most species had pulled their trade ships out because docking was too unreliable. What had once been the busiest trading hub in Council space was now a ghost station. Kirzha sat in the control center and stared at the red warning lights. He had tried everything. He had followed every protocol perfectly. He had brought in experts to help. Nothing worked. Finally, in desperation, he did something no had done in centuries. He tried to improvise. He looked at the docking schedule, and instead of following the priority system, he just started assigning docks based on which ships could dock fastest. He ignored the environmental protocols and started manually adjusting life support for each section based on who actually lived there, not who was supposed to live there according to the plan. It helped a little. The station was still failing, but not as quickly. But Kirzha was exhausted. Improvising was hard. It required constant attention and decision-making. It was stressful and uncertain. He understood now why Wu Jin had always looked tired. The human had been making hundreds of small judgment calls every day, each one bending or breaking some rule to make things work. No wonder humans burned out so quickly. Living in constant chaos like that would drive any sane species mad. Representative watched the birth rate projections for his species. The numbers were clear. In 50 years, there would be too few to maintain their civilization. In 100 years, there might be only a few thousand left. In 150 years, they would be extinct. He had tried everything to contact the human geneticists. He had sent gifts. He had sent apologies. He had offered to pay any price. Nothing worked. The humans had closed their borders and their hearts. They were going to die, and it was the Council's fault for dismissing the only species that could have saved them. On Council Prime Station itself, systems were failing. The station was old, and it had always required constant maintenance and adjustment. Human engineers had been part of the maintenance teams for 50 years. They had kept things running through creative repairs and innovative solutions. Now those engineers were gone, and the station was falling apart. The life support in Section 7 had failed completely. That section had been evacuated. Then Section 12's artificial gravity started fluctuating. Then the main power grid began having brownouts. Each problem was small, but together they were making the station unlivable. Worse, the station was a symbol. If Council Prime Station failed, it would be the ultimate proof that the Council could not manage without humanity. Called another emergency session. This time, only 83 representatives attended. The rest were dealing with crises in their home systems, or their civilizations had already collapsed too much for them to send representatives. The chamber that had once been full of 800 species now looked empty and sad. Stood in the center, and for the first time in his long life, he looked old and defeated. "I have called you here to discuss a truth we must face," he said. His mandibles clicked slowly, the sound of exhaustion. "We have failed, not just in our treatment of humanity. We have failed as a civilization." The chamber was silent. "The humans were with us for 50 years, continued. "In that time, they became essential to our survival. We did not notice it happening because we were too proud, too certain of our ancient wisdom, too convinced that we were the adults and they were the children." He gestured around the empty chamber. "Look at us now. Half our representatives are gone. Their civilizations are collapsing. The death toll across Council space has reached 200 billion souls. 200 billion people dead because we were too proud to give humans equal votes." Representatives stood. "We must try again. We must send another message. We must beg them to help us." Clicked his mandibles in a pattern that meant bitter amusement. "We have sent hundreds of messages. They ignore them all, and why should they help us? We called them children. We laughed at them. We rejected them 3 times when they asked for basic respect." "Then what do we do?" another representative asked. "We die," said simply. "Or we adapt. Those are our only choices. Some species will survive this. Some will learn to think differently, to be more flexible, to embrace chaos instead of fearing it. But most of us are too old, too rigid, too set in our ancient ways. Most of us will not survive." He looked around the chamber one last time. "The age of the Galactic Council is over. We had millions of years to learn. We learned nothing, and now we pay the price." The session ended. Representatives left quietly, returning to their ships and their dying civilizations. Remained alone in the chamber. He composed one final message to humanity, not begging this time, not asking for help, just an acknowledgement of the truth. He sent it directly to Ambassador Ho, and this time, surprisingly, he received a response. 1 year after humanity from the Galactic Council, the galaxy had changed forever. 43 species had collapsed economically. Their governments were gone, their civilizations in ruins. The thought weavers who had once believed they were the species in the galaxy were bankrupt and broken. Their beautiful colony ship floated in orbit, a monument to pride and failure. 8 species faced extinction. Not might face extinction, would face extinction. The math was clear. They did not have enough members left to sustain their populations. There were one of them. In 3 generations they would be gone. The death toll across Council space had reached 200 billion souls. That number was hard to understand. 200 billion thinking beings with lives and families and dreams all dead. Most died from problems that humans could have solved. Plagues, famines, wars, system failures. They died because the Council had been too proud to give humans an equal vote. Council Prime Station was barely functioning. Half of it was dark and evacuated. The once great symbol of galactic unity was now a dying reminder of failure. Only 200 representatives still attended Council sessions. The other 600 species had either collapsed, gone extinct, or simply given up on the Council. Representative sat in his quarters and looked at the genetic projection one more time. The numbers had not changed. that would be extinct in 147 years, maybe sooner if the collapse of civilization made things worse. He had watched his people lose hope. Families stopped trying to have children because what was the point? Their species was doomed. Some had simply given up on life entirely. Had sent 342 messages to human space over the past year. Every single one had been ignored or returned with the same automated message. We do not wish to be contacted. On II, the plague had finally burned itself out. Not because anyone cured it, but because there was almost nobody left to infect. Out of 2 billion who had lived on that planet, fewer than 30 million survived. The dead were buried in mass graves that stretched across continents. Had lost his entire extended family. His brother, his nieces, his cousins, all dead, and he knew it was his fault. If he had supported humanity's proposal, Dr. Haywan might still be in that research lab and the cure might have been found. The war had finally ended, but only because both species had exhausted themselves. They had bombed each other back to pre-industrial levels of technology. 3 systems were now radioactive wastelands. The survivors were scattered refugees with no homes to return to. 40 billion people had died in that war. A war that human peacekeepers had prevented for 20 years with nothing but their presence and their reputation. The Crossroads station had been abandoned. Kirzha had tried to keep it running for 8 months. He had worked himself to exhaustion trying to do what Wu Jin had made look easy. In the end, he gave up. The station was declared unsafe and evacuated. The loss of the Crossroads collapsed trade across 5 major routes. Entire regions of space became economically isolated. More species spiraled into poverty and chaos. In what remained of the council chambers, called one final session, he stood alone at the center of the hall. Only 83 representatives had come. The chamber that had once held 800 now felt like a tomb. "I have asked you here to acknowledge a truth," said. His voice was quiet, translated into every language. "The Galactic Council is dead. It died 1 year ago when humanity walked away. We just did not realize it yet." No one argued with him. "I have spent this year thinking about what went wrong," continued. "At first, I blamed humanity. I thought they were being emotional and childish. Then I blamed the council structure, thinking we just needed to adjust some procedures. But I finally understand the real problem." He clicked his mandibles slowly. "We, the ancient species of this council, forgot something important. We forgot that the universe is not stable, it is chaos. Things break down, problems arise, and when they do, you need flexibility to solve them. You need creativity. You need someone willing to try things that might not work. You need chaos to fight chaos." He gestured around the empty chamber. "We ancient species, we survive by being stable, by being rigid, by following proven methods and ancient wisdom. This works well when things are stable, but the universe is never stable for long, and when chaos comes, rigidity breaks." "Humans are different," continued. "They are chaos themselves. They change constantly. They try new things constantly. They break their own rules constantly. This makes them unpredictable and sometimes frustrating, but it also makes them perfect for dealing with a chaotic universe." He paused, letting his words translate fully. "For 50 years, humans were our immune system. When something unexpected happened, they handled it. When something broke in an unusual way, they fixed it. When someone needed a creative solution, they provided it. They were doing this so naturally, so constantly, that we stopped noticing. We took them for granted. And we dismissed them as children," Representative added quietly. "Yes," agreed. "We dismissed them. We laughed at them. And when they left, we learned what they had really been doing for us. We learned it the hard way. 200 billion souls learned it the hardest way possible." A young clerk named Ha stood up from the observation area. Normally, clerks never spoke during sessions, but there were no normal rules anymore. "Council Prime," Ha said respectfully, I have been studying human psychology and history. I have found something you should know. Speak said. Humans forgive, Ha said. It is one of their strangest traits. They forgive people who hurt them. They give second chances. They believe in redemption. This makes no logical sense. Evolution should favor species that punish betrayal, but humans forgive anyway. A small hope flickered in the chamber. Maybe humanity would forgive them. Maybe they would help after all. But, Ha continued, humans only forgive when two things happen. First, you must ask for forgiveness sincerely. Second, you must change. You must show that you learned from your mistake. We have asked for help many times this year, but have we actually changed? Silence fell over the chamber. Every representative looked around at the others. No, clicked finally. We have not changed, we have suffered, we have collapsed, we have died, but we have not learned. We still think like we always have. We still believe we are right. We want humans to save us, but we do not want to admit we were wrong about them. We want their help, but not their equality. He stood still for a long moment. Then we do not deserve their forgiveness. Composed one final message, not to Ambassador Ho this time, to the entire human government on Earth. He wrote it carefully, choosing each word with precision. The message was simple. We were wrong. You were right. We do not ask you to return or to save us. We ask only that you remember us as a lesson. Teach your children about us. Tell them that pride and rigidity led to our death, while flexibility and creativity led to your survival. The galaxy belongs to you now. May you do better than we did. He signed it formally and sent it. Then he waited. The response came 1 week later. It appeared on every screen, every communication device, every display in council space. Ambassador Ho's face appeared. He looked older now, with more gray in his hair, but his eyes were still sharp. The human delegation has reviewed Council Prime's message, Ho said in his calm, measured voice. We acknowledge the Council's collapse and the suffering of all Council species. We mourn the loss of 200 billion souls. They did nothing wrong except trust leaders who were too proud to listen. He paused, and the entire galaxy held its breath. Humanity will not rejoin the Galactic Council, Ho continued. The Council represented everything wrong with rigid, hierarchical thinking. It was a relic of ancient times that could not adapt to a changing universe. Hope died in the hearts of the listeners, but then Ho said one word. However, humanity will offer aid to any species that requests it, not as council members, as neighbors, as equals. We will share our medical research, our agricultural knowledge, our engineering solutions. We will send peacekeepers to protect trade routes. We will help rebuild what has collapsed. But Ho said firmly, we do this on our terms. We work only with species who treat us as equals, who listen to our ideas, who are willing to change and adapt. The age of the Galactic Council is over. What comes next will be different. It will be built on respect, flexibility, and the understanding that no species has all the answers. He looked directly into the camera. To the species that voted for humanity's equality 1 year ago, like the Wu is already on her way to your systems with medical teams and supplies. You supported us when it cost you something. We will support you now. To the species that dismissed us, you are not forgotten. Prove that you have learned. Prove that you have changed. Show us that you understand now what you did not understand before. Do that and we will help you. To Council Prime specifically, your apology is accepted. Your wisdom came too late to save many, but not too late to save some. They are welcome to apply for partnership with humanity. We will work together as equals to find solutions. Ho's expression softened slightly. The age of ancient wisdom is over. The age of adaptive thinking has begun. Some of you will adapt. You will learn to be flexible. You will embrace chaos instead of fearing it. You will thrive in the new galaxy. Others will not adapt. You will cling to old ways. You will remain rigid and proud. And you will fade away like the dinosaurs of Earth, unable to survive in a changing world. He stood up. "Welcome to the future. We hope you can keep up." The transmission ended. In the council chamber, something changed. Not in everyone. Some representatives remained stubborn, still believing they were right, but others, like N and Ha, felt something new. Hoping. Not hope that things would go back to normal. Normal was dead. But hope that maybe, just maybe, they could learn to think differently. They could learn to adapt. They could survive in this new galaxy that humanity was building. Over the next months, human ships began arriving in Council space, not as conquerors, as helpers. Medical teams went to plague worlds. Agricultural specialists went to failing colonies. Engineers went to broken stations. But they only went where they were welcomed as equals, where species were willing to listen and learn. The welcomed human geneticists with tears and gratitude. Within 2 years, the first generation of successfully treated children would be born. The species would survive. The Crossroads was rebuilt, but this time with a joint human management team. Kirza worked alongside a human named Learning to Think Flexibly. It was hard. It went against every instinct he had, but slowly he learned. The civilization, broken by plague and pride, began to heal. They learned from humans, not just technology or methods, but ways of thinking. They learned to question their own ancient wisdom. They learned to try new things. They learned to embrace a little bit of chaos. Not all species could adapt. They remained proud and rigid. They refused human help because accepting it would mean admitting they were wrong. Their civilization continued to collapse. Within a generation, they would be gone. The thought weavers split into 2 groups. Some embraced change and partnered with humanity. Others could not accept that their perfect logic had failed them. Those who adapted survived. Those who did not faded into history. The galaxy was being remade, not in the Council's image of ancient stability, in humanity's image of constant change and adaptation. Years later, Ha would write a book about this period. She called it The Great Silence, How Humanity Taught the Galaxy to Listen. It became required reading for every species that partnered with humanity. The book's dedication was simple. To the 200 billion souls who paid the price for our pride, may we never forget what it cost to learn this lesson. The Galactic Council was gone, but from its ashes something new was growing, something more flexible, more adaptive, more alive. And at the center of it all were the humans, the species everyone had called children, the chaos bringers who had turned away in silence and forced the galaxy to understand what it had lost. They had taught their lesson the hard way, but they had taught it well. The galaxy would never make that mistake again.